Welcome back to the APR Excellence Program. I hope you found it to be beneficial so far, and I'm very grateful to all of our APRs who volunteered to serve as instructors in the program this year. And we wanted to save, I'll say the best for last. We wanted to say the best for last. No pressure, Kay. We wanted to save the best for last as far as the APR Excellence Program. We're going to do a deeper dive into the steps to become an APR. Some of these slides, you've seen some of these slides before, but I did a very quick overview before the PR planning session that Mike Gross did the first week. So we want to take our time and go through these, especially because something has changed. Something has changed at the national level that relates to reaccreditation, maintenance of accreditation every 3 years. And Kay and I will talk a little bit about that. And we're delighted to have Kay and Magdalena with us, who is one of our more recently minted APRs. And Kay's got a wonderful background, and her story is pretty impressive too, as to how she came about acquiring the APR. She's going to go through some of this. And Kay, just let me know when you need me to jump in, and I'm happy to advance the slides on your behalf. So welcome, Kay, and thank you everybody for being with us.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kay. I'm joining you from Norfolk, Virginia. And the reason I'm in the Philadelphia chapter, but somehow down here, is just because I'm from Pennsylvania, the Lehigh Valley area in particular. And I always just wanted to keep my roots in PRSA closer to home. So I'm always been around, and Dr. Farbman will tell you, we first met when I was actually living in Alaska, and I was still trying to be connected to the Philadelphia chapter. But right now I work in military public affairs. There's a little command here called Joint Enabling Capabilities Command. And my job is really to be a contingency public affairs officer. So actually none of my work is done in Virginia. All of my work is done outside. And so essentially anything big happens related to the military, I answer the phone and I go. So just recently I was in a place called Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, which is a part of Operation Allies Welcome, which was supporting all of the Afghan refugees who had been stationed there at the base and are going through a resettlement process with the Department of Homeland Security. So I was there for about a month, and that was like the most recent thing I did. And I've come back and I'm getting settled and seeing when they're gonna call the phone again, and I have to go out. So I'm glad I'm here with you guys and I get to kind of settle down in Norfolk for a little bit. But that's me, and we're going to talk about the 5 steps to APR. So let's get started. Next slide, please. Great. What is the APR? What does it mean? I think you guys, having gone through this whole excellence program, probably know this at this point. But for me, the 3 letters that go after your name, it just means that you know what you're talking about when it comes to public relations, and that's usually what I point to when anyone asks me about it. Is just, I know what I'm doing. I've gone through the process. I can explain it. I can articulate it. And if you ask me to do anything related to public relations, I could probably help solve your problem, no matter what it is. So that's what it is for me. Next slide. This is the Universal Accreditation Board. These are just the organizations that kind of oversee PRSA and APR in general. So that's more admin. I don't know if you want to add anything on that, Dr. Farbman. Next slide. All right, eligibility. So eligibility just really comes down to being a member of one of those organizations. And the recommendation is that you have 5 years of experience or academia in the public relations field. As I've understood, we've made exceptions to that depending on your level of experience, but that's all kind of sussed out when you actually put in your application. So essentially, your eligibility is just all about what you put down in your application and how we decide that you're ready to move forward. But next slide on that one. So these are the actual 5 steps: apply, study, panel, exam, and maintenance. Next slide. All right. The big first step is applying, right? I probably thought about applying like over the course of like 3 years, and I just like didn't do it because I kept feeling like this, am I ready feeling. Once I actually took the time to go to the website, get the application form, fill it in, I was like, because the application form's great. It kind of shows you if you're ready or not, if you can actually fill that thing in and say, yes, I have the appropriate amount of experience to get into this. It was pretty pain-free to just fill it out. I just, I don't know what I was scared of over the years that I just didn't apply. And once I did it, it was easy. I will tell you, I've made read within 1 year is the application process, because that was one of the fine prints that I didn't read when I first applied. Wasn't an issue for me, but certainly better to plan in advance. I remember getting the notification back that I was application received and you're good to go and you have 1 year to complete this process. And I was a little bit like shocked, like, oh my gosh, like I'm on the clock, right? Like I wasn't expecting that. And so I definitely want to make sure everyone understands that when you do actually start, you're on the clock for 1 year to get that process done. And certainly want to plan when you decide to submit that application. Does anyone have any questions on like just the application process? Awesome. Next slide.
Well, one thing, Kay, not a question, but I've said this before, just to reinforce, as you're thinking about applying for the APR, if you are going to do it, and you have any additional questions or you need my help in walking through the process, email me, reach out to me. That's my job as the APR chair. That's my job, is to get you through and get you those letters after your name. So email me and I'll serve any resource I can to help you get that credential.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Okay, studying. This is what I would say was the hard part, depending on how good you are at studying. But it is essentially your self-study program and how you decide to come into approaching the process of getting your APR. But number one bullet there, read the APR study guide. I don't think there was ever a study session that I had for myself that I didn't have the study guide right next to me or open on my computer. It just helps you organize all of the things that you should be getting through. And that should probably be the number one document you're going to read through when you're getting started into the study process, because you're just going to want to see which KSAs you need more emphasis on. If you're ever reading through the guide and you're like, I actually don't know what this is, or I need to kind of refresh myself, you just kind of use that as a nice checklist and guide list to help you along your journey. You will at one point get linked up with a mentor. I know I did. I don't know if, did someone enter? Do we need yeah, okay. Hi, new person. You'll get linked up with a mentor. Dr. Farbman was mine, and thankfully definitely calmed my nerves on just the whole, encouragement of like, hey, you can do this, and like, here are the next steps, and just helping me know what the actual requirements were. The panel presentation questionnaire is a great way to also just test how much you know, because you start to have to actually fill in applicable elements of PR, and you go, man, do I know this stuff or not? And then other resources that you can use when you're studying is just the recommended text, which is on the website. The one that I used, because I was a little bit new to like civilian public relations, was I have it in my notes here, strategic planning for public relations is the title, and that's actually in the recommended text. So that one I recommend, and I will say it really helped me, at least. Other than that, you can also sign up for the actual study cohorts and the web, which is like online. I signed up for those study groups. I'll be honest, I didn't participate as much as I thought I would, but that was just me personally. What I did find was useful from that particular online study group was that they do go through the way that the test questions will be presented to you, which is really helpful, because it's not your standard, define this thing. It's, here's a situation and how would you actually respond to it. And so once you're exposed to those types of questions a little more, it makes the test seem a little bit more approachable. Yeah, I would say corresponding with your mentor is a big thing, just to keep you like know that you're on the right and steady path. But that's the studying part of it, and everybody's study plan is going to look different depending on what you're your level of comfort is with the material. I came in pretty cold, right? I didn't have a PR or communications degree out of college or even in my master's. I was a straight English major, so all the stuff that I learned was on the job, and so I had to just do a little bit more studying so that I would understand the actual like vocabulary vernacular that's used in PR. Does anyone have any questions on study resources and how to go about that?
Just want to share with everybody that, and I might have mentioned this on like the front end, what we've done with our APR Excellence program this year, in addition to delivering all of the content remotely with our expert APRs doing the heavy lifting of the instruction, we have a number of APRs in our chapter who have volunteered to serve as said mentor, as Kay was just talking about. So, you know, you let me know that you're ready to go down the process, and I can send you a list of our APR folks who have volunteered to be mentors, and you can look them up on LinkedIn, look them up online, and you can say, oh, I think I'd be comfortable talking with this person. And then I can make the connection for you. And they're standing at the ready to help.
Yeah. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Panel presentation. So this is honestly the fun part of the process. I enjoyed participating in the panel presentation so much. When you actually go through it, you'll decide a date with your mentor. Your mentor will take care of finding 3 accredited members to serve on your little mini board for your presentation and your panel. You will have kind of the answer key, if you will, ahead, because it's just that the panel questionnaire. And you just pick a topic of what you want to go over. So when you're kind of preparing for the panel, I always encourage people to either just go for something you're interested in, right? It can be something you've already done. It can be something you want to do in the future. It can be something you did way back in school and you want to brush off and say, hey, like, I'm going to take another crack at this as far as like presenting a communication plan and strategy. But this is really the time to be like, hey, like, how much do I really know this? And you know, put yourself out there. I had a lot of fun with it. I would say this was probably for me the most valuable experience was actually going through the presentation. I did a little bit of a mixture of both. I was in the middle of a communication process, like a plan and strategy for my work, and I kind of just said, okay, here's where I am right now, and I'm going to project out what I think I would like to do in the future. And that's what I presented, and it ended up actually, I used all of everything that I presented, you know, for the next year after that, because it was, you know, in real time what I was working on. The fun part about it, just the weeds of it, when you show up to your presentation, I'm sure, I don't know, Dr. Farbman, if we're exploring virtual options now. So I know we're coming out of the pandemic, but I assume that that's part of it.
Yep,
I did mine in
virtual.
Awesome. I did mine in person, which I enjoyed. Meeting and expanding, honestly, a network of APRs is one of the fun parts of meeting with some accredited members. But you do your presentation, you'll step outside of the room, or you'll wait a minute while the board deliberates and says if you're ready to advance or not advance based on your presentation. They usually will ask you questions to kind of test your KSAs at the end of your presentation, because that's kind of the whole point, right? Is to make sure that if you didn't present everything, they want to make sure that you can demonstrate that you know the KSAs that are kind of being tested in that realm. But they'll deliberate, and then you'll kind of get brought back in the room or the virtual room or whatever it is, and they'll let you know if you're good to go on again, or if you got to try again. But yeah, does anyone have any questions on the panel? Like I said, for me, it was the funnest part of the accreditation process. I'm sure it didn't, I don't know that I felt that way in the moment, but like it ended up being that way. So.
Okay, obviously you did a terrific job, but I just a bit of commentary here I want to share with everybody. I know, and I share this with you as in, not that I'm trying to be selfish and that I want to be the one to help you get through this, but I share this with you as I don't know if this is such a good idea. And that is, PRSA has like these national APR boot camps. And what they do is they'll do like this, I'm doing one next week, and they'll do a readiness review for somebody on a Wednesday. expecting the panel to pass the person on the Wednesday so the person can take the test on Friday. And I would just share, just from my experience of being on these panels, don't do it. Work through us locally instead. And the only reason why is, what if you put together a terrific package, or what you think is a terrific package, but you didn't have a chance to talk to your APR chair to get guidance, advice, this, that, the other. You didn't have a chance to talk to a mentor. And then you go in. The thing is, with these national virtual things, locally virtual, we do exactly what Kay just said. We ask you to step out. We'll ask you to sign back in. I'll text you, ask you to sign back in, and then we'll tell you if you passed or not. But on the national thing, you do the presentation, you do the panel, the candidate leaves, and then we don't tell the candidate if he or she passed. You know, we got to go directly to the folks in New York to let them know. And then it's the folks in New York's job to say, hey, you know how you just paid $400 to do this, and you're expected to take the test on Friday? You're not taking it on Friday. You know, and I don't know from my experience who's actually going on and taking the test. All I know is who we've recommended and who we haven't recommended. So that's why I mean, I can understand if you're in a hurry to get it done, this, that, and the other. But I would just strongly recommend go with us at the local level, because we've got my predecessors who were APR chairs have a strong track record of building this program for success. I think we've only had one person fail in my time involved in the last 20 years. That person failed once and then took the test again and passed. So we've got a pretty strong track record. Okay, I'll stop with the commentary.
No, commentary is good. Everyone's APR process is going to be different. So, I'm sharing a little bit of what I know, but yours is going to be whatever you guys end up doing. It's going to be completely different. So, all right. Next slide. Yeah. All right. So the dreaded exam. So this is an interesting one, and I was probably maybe one of the few who did it remotely, but essentially, after I got my, hey, Kay, you're good to go from the panel presentation, I entered into my kind of more serious study time, just spending some hours on weekends going through KSAs, reading texts and whatnot to prepare for the exam. Nice thing about Prometric, you schedule it yourself, right? So it's you can see what list of dates works for you. You can schedule it months in advance, honestly. So that way it kind of it shouldn't be unlike the panel presentation where you are kind of trying to schedule it with other people. This one is completely on your own. Just pick the date and time that works for you. If you end up going in person, I'm not even sure if Prometric's doing that right now. It's just just going to the local testing center. If you're like me and you end up doing it virtually, I was literally had my Prometric in person scheduled. I actually had to fly to Anchorage to do it, but that was in March of 2020, and I think we all remember what happened then. So that was canceled, and I was able to get a virtual Prometric in a couple months later. But the test and the site, essentially what you'll be walking into is a pretty sanitized area, right? There's no phones, no nothing. You're just allowed to walk in. When you do it virtually, they will have you pick up your laptop and scan the room literally to make sure that there's nothing in the room. And you actually technically have someone watching you the whole time, which is a little weird, but they're watching you as you're taking the test to just make sure you're not, trying to take an advantage of being at home or at work or wherever you're going to be. But yeah, it's a long test, and it's certainly grueling. Definitely need to just be ready for it. But I think the best advice is just to be well rested and prepared, and you just go for it. That bottom bullet there says preliminary results immediate, which it's almost like shocking when you see the little, like, it shows up really quick when it's like you passed and you're like, wait, I did. And you're like, kind of, because it's just kind of like the last page of the thing. But you kind of just have to wait for the final results to come through, because it almost feels like anticlimactic after like your 3 hours of testing and you're like, oh wait, I'm at this point. Maybe I passed, I'm not sure. But it's if you study, you won't have an issue. I feel like everyone I've met who's gone through it, they almost feel like they overstudied. I don't think I was in that camp. I think I was like happy, and so a little relieved that I passed, but if you take the time to do it, take it when you're ready, you'll be fine. I don't know, does anyone have any questions on the actual exam itself? Cool. All right, next slide. This is what the exam is actually comprised of, percentage-wise. So when you're looking through your KSAs, it can kind of help you on like, right, you probably don't need to spend too much time on the history of the profession when you're studying, but maybe one or two reads about the history will serve you well. But it kind of just helps you know where the meat of the exam's going to be on, and that way you can kind of get a good study plan together. All right, next slide. Cool, maintenance. So I'm in this process right now. I'm sure some other APRs might have a better example because I've not even had to resubmit my maintenance points or anything like that. But essentially, getting an APR and getting the accreditation is a lifelong, thing, and you actually have to be committed to staying true to the profession and updated in the profession. And that's why those 3 letters mean a lot, is because it's not a test you took 20 years ago. It's something that you consistently maintain. So what the new process is right now, as of 2020, so for anyone who's going to be taking the process, you'll be like me, where you have to get 15 CEU points. It's, I would say, mostly because some of you are just on your initial journey, I wouldn't worry about this too much, but essentially it's just focusing on professional development, public service, and ethics. And there will be a lovely sheet, a worksheet actually, that shows you all of the wonderful opportunities you can get involved in that'll actually help you accomplish those 15 CEUs. You have 3 years to do it, so it's not by any means a lot to do. It's just making sure you have a plan to get it done and that you're staying involved in the community. So I was glad that I actually, being involved in this made me go and look at what I should be, being involved in as an APR. And this is one of the reasons why I love the APR program, is because when I look at the list and I go, oh, I need to, do a class, or I need to put myself out there and maybe volunteer some PR, like stretch myself a little bit as a PR professional. That's why I was like, that's why I want to be an APR, right? Because I know that you're held to a higher standard. It's not just about checking that box. It's about being really at the top of your game and being able to prove that you're at the top of your game over the course of your career. So like I said, I won't worry too much about maintenance, but that's just an overview of what it would be once you get your accreditation. Any questions on that one? Awesome. Next slide. Cool. So this is one that I added in. I just wanted to show what the approach to this 1-year process will look like. I would say I took the top linear balanced approach, which is I did 1 step at a time, right? I didn't want to overburden myself with studying so far and making sure that I was ready and all that. I was just, hey, I applied. Okay, I applied. I have 1 year. Talk to my mentor. When's my presentation? I'm just going to focus on that, because you're going to learn and be studying automatically through that process anyways. Focus on the presentation, get that out of the way. Took a few months after that to get ready for the exam. And then, obviously I got my accreditation before, actually, I was supposed to get my accreditation before the 1-year mark, but then COVID happened, but I digress. There's a lot of people that I've met who actually recommend front loading it, right? Kind of what Dr. Farben talks about, where it's like, don't even, study, get ready for it, be ready to go before you even get into it, so that when you apply, you can do presentation, exam just like that. For those who are really, really well practiced in PR, that probably will work for you, right? If you're like, I have a degree already, these terms are very familiar to me and I know this, that's probably what your year will look like, is just knock it out really quick. If you end up being like the last one there on the backload, that's okay. You still get the whole, if you want to take your sweet time getting ready for it and you're going to knock it all out at the end, no problem. All of those processes end up with you with an accreditation in public relations. The biggest thing to take away from this is whatever your process or your approach is going to be, just have a good plan, know what you're going to do, and know that a little bit of flexibility is going to be needed when you're talking about the presentation. Life happens, and sometimes waiting until that backload maybe is not the best way to go, but if that's what you want to do, that's okay too. but just a little bit of encouragement. All of these work, whatever you end up doing, just go for it. Next slide.
Let me just add real quickly, Kay, that
Yeah.
we can do any one of these models, right? I'm here to be
Yeah.
flexible with you. Like Kay said, you know, we're all different learners and different workers. If you want to front load, I'll help you front load and get it done. If you want to back load, I'll help you, you know, put it off as long as we can before it's time to get it done. Or if you want to do the linear approach like Kay did, like I did, we can do that too. But the thing I'm my criticism of this national thing that they do is that they don't tell you that you've passed the boot camp, the readiness review, right? They don't let us tell you. They don't like the panelists tell you. It's like a whole process going through the folks in New York. So you know, we're at the ready to do any one of these 3 models. Or if one of you has a 4th model that we're not seeing, we could do that too.
Yeah, for sure. I see Tony Ann is ready to front load. That's awesome. And we can definitely help you do that. All right. Friendly advice for you. I've said it a few times. Just have a plan when you kind of get into this process. You know, if you're a goal maker, write down your goals, write down your dates of when you want to have it done, and just be ready. That's kind of how I approached it. I went into the year of 2020 saying I want my APR, right? Like, and just getting it done. Challenge yourself. So like I said, that panel presentation, awesome time to just try something that you haven't done, and you know, that APR means something, right? So like try something that you haven't done before, and try a problem, you know, and project something for work, whatever it might be, to actually like grow yourself a little bit during this process. Because yes, it's an accreditation of proving that you know something, but it's also an opportunity to learn and grow. And then being one with the community. This is APR is just so fun because you meet a lot of cool people. Everybody does different PR work. So don't be shy to reach out to any of us if you have questions, especially when you're getting ready for stuff, or even just work stuff. I mean, like, talking about work stuff is always just fun in general. I like I said, I enjoyed the journey just because I got to know Dr. Farbman. I got to meet people on my panel presentation board, get to see some people out here in virtual land as well. But the whole APR community is awesome. And I've never met an APR who isn't willing to help. So like, don't be afraid that if you see someone with a APR plus M, to just, you know, get right in there and make some connections. Cool. Next slide. This is overall questions for anyone, anything. I'm glad I didn't take up 2 hours. I didn't expect that I would, but I do want to make sure that if you guys have any questions on the process, I'm happy to answer, or at least take it down and get you an answer.
I have a minor question. This is Dawn. At the beginning, you mentioned after the completion and submission of the application, you're waiting for notification to proceed. Roughly about how long is that? Is that short, long?
It was pretty quick. I think mine was like in like 10 days.
Yeah.
I want to say I was like kind of surprised like when it came back. I was like, because like I said, I kind of submitted mine like, oh, I just need to do this, and I wasn't really like in the mindset. And then when it came back and it was like, you got a year, I was like, oh man, it's pretty quick. So
Okay.
it's definitely not immediate, but it's, you know, I wouldn't say it takes longer than 2 weeks.
Yeah, they tell us 2 to 3 weeks.
Awesome.
Okay.
Within that 2 to 3 week time frame, but most of the time it's much quicker than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you pay the money up front. You pay the money up front. Yeah. So they're like, yeah, oh, paying customer.
Yep.
I have a question. This is Tony Ann Blake. I have hesitated to do this because my understanding in the past has been that I needed to have like a full portfolio that represented like a full owned campaign. And the trajectory of my job has been, you know, a lot of government work, or that doesn't necessarily have my name on it. And I wanted to know how that's handled in I'm assuming that that's what you do in the presentation portion, if I'm understanding properly.
Yeah, you do a campaign, and it's no issue if that's not specifically what your work is. You really can make it up. Like I mean, I know we usually say, you know, you want to be able to speak knowledgeably to whatever you present, but like if you want to take, you can literally go to someone in your work and say like, what's a campaign that I could maybe present, and literally take that and use that as your presentation. Because it's not necessarily about, hey, did you author this whole campaign plan by yourself? It's how well can you speak to the KSAs that are involved in that campaign plan. So yeah, I don't want you to plagiarize anyone by any means, but
Right.
but you can certainly borrow from other people to say, hey, like if I was going to internalize this plan and present it, you know, that's okay. Like you don't need to come up with something, you know, out of thin air, right? Like that's not what anyone's asking you to do.
Awesome.
Academics is also as well. Like I don't, if you've had anything from classes, you can certainly borrow from that too. Let me correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Farbman.
No, you're right. You're right.
yeah.
It's recommended the way it's, and you'll see in the study guide and the prep guide for the readiness review. It's recommended that it's either a campaign you created and executed, or in the process of creating and executing, or a campaign you played some kind of role in, even if that role were minor. Even if that's recommended. But you could certainly do what Kay just said, and that is, if there was a campaign that took place within your organization and you had just enough knowledge to be dangerous, and then you went and talked to the folks who were responsible so you could help complete your questionnaire, and you were savvy enough to present it in the readiness review from that perspective of, okay, I need to be able to demonstrate research, objectives, strategies, tactics, evaluation, audience segmentation, situation analysis, you know, all those things in a comprehensive PR plan that Mike talked about a couple weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago now, 4 weeks, however, a month ago, right? A month ago. Then that's all you really need. Just as Kay said, just to show that you are knowledgeable in those key knowledge areas that are going to be tested of you on the exam.
Thank you. That means I could just take a campaign that I have done, but didn't have all the elements and add those in. Okay.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah, I like for mine, I was not complete with my campaign plan. Like it was like I was literally in the process, so I built it out the way that I thought it would go. And one of the key parts of RPI is research. I did not do any research in the actual campaign plan, but obviously for my presentation, I had to prove, well, if I had done research, right, what would that have looked like? And so when I did the presentation, I certainly acted as if I had conducted research and how that research would have been conducted. In truth, I hadn't, but you know, the board didn't know, and that's not really what they were there to judge me on. Right? It was just if I could demonstrate what the plan should have looked like.
And I think, Kay, one of the standard questions, and Kay, you'll get to have the pleasure of doing this once they ask you to be a panelist. One of the standard questions at the panel is kind of like we get together for the pregame show and say, okay, who's going to ask what would you do differently? Regardless of how great the presentation is going to be, who gets the short straw and asks that question? You're going to get that question. What would you do differently if resources weren't an issue, or time weren't an issue, or you had the staff to do A, B, C? What would you do differently? Because they just want to, you know, they just want to see what you got. And it's not, how do I want to say, it's not 60 minutes. What do I mean by that? Mike Wallace, who hasn't been around for a long time, Mike Wallace isn't there to try to goad you into saying something that you're going to regret and you're not going to pass the exam. You know, at least the way I try to structure these is that we want to be coaches for you to say, okay, this is what we think you should study because it wasn't addressed in your presentation, and you might get a question on it in the exam. It's not, we're going to fail you because you don't know this. It's, these are some things you might want to look into just to make sure you're fully ready for the exam.
Right.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
Officer Messon, can you tell us a little bit about the sort of format of your presentation itself? Did you use like a PowerPoint deck? Was it video? Sort of, how did that look? And or is that something you sort of work through with your mentor? That's part one. Part two is, do you ever go back in your head to that panel presentation and discussion, and there's one question that keeps coming back to you, like, oh, I wish I'd answered it this way, or that was a great question. It's one of those indelible moments that you could share with us.
Sure. Yeah. So you will get the template questionnaire, which is essentially you can submit it as a Word document. So I think what I did was I did the Word document and actually like filled in all of the academic parts of it that you needed to say, like, this is what I did. I gave one of those to each of the panelists, and then I ended up doing a presentation just because that's easier for me. I like using visual aids. So I did a PowerPoint as well. You do not have to do that. I think you can actually just go with the questionnaire and present that and speak to it if you wanted to do it. And you could literally just have people turn pages if you wanted, but I wanted to do the PowerPoint. So I might have did a little more than I needed, but like I said, I had some fun with it. The second question, I think the one question that I remember that like sticks out, honestly, it feels like a blur. Like I'm like trying to remember, like, oh my gosh, like you're like so a little bit nervous, obviously, when you go through it. But one question I remember was actually about audiences. So I was just kind of challenged on how I analyze my audiences for my plan. So that's really, I can't say that it was a difficult question or that I would have answered it differently, but I remember, that I did have to articulate like, well, because you write down in your questionnaire, these are my audiences, and this is the way I'm going to approach it, that I had to know that, like, right. I wrote it down in my plan. So now I need to speak to why did I pick these audiences and just defend it a little bit. So it's just a sample of the type of question you might get, but that's just one that kind of stuck out to me that I remember.
Evan, that's
Thanks
a
so
great
much.
question. That's a great question. I just want to share just from a APR chair and panelist perspective. I think the reason why that question was asked wasn't necessarily to test Kay. It was because Kay practices a completely different genre of public relations than our panelists. None of our panelists were APR military or communication folks in the military. These were all, her three panelists were all folks who had either worked in the public sector, whether it was like government or like a toll commission or something, and then people who were involved in agency work or for-profit organizations. So it was just completely different for them. I think that question was asked more for their benefit than for Kay's. So don't be surprised if you get questions that might seem like, why are they asking that question? I mean, that's common. It's because all that matters when I've got to get those panelists for you is I've got to find 3 APRs who are available on the day you want to do your panel. So it might be like, if you're from higher ed, I might be able to get you 3 higher ed people. If you're from agency, I might be able to get you 3 people in the military. I get you whoever's available, who I know is a good person, isn't going to dog you in these things. So, and that's the other part of it too. I'm not allowed to bring an APR on that like I can't bring I could bring Kay on because she's an instructor here, but you don't work with her and you haven't had like a formal working relationship with her. So I could bring some of the instructors on, but if it turned out that you and Kay went to school back in the day together, I wouldn't be allowed to. That's against the rules. I'm not allowed to bring people on that you have a good a regular working relationship on or a personal friendship with. I'm not allowed to do it. So that's another. That's one constraint I have as APR chairs. Like I could just go get 3 of our buddies and we do, well, that's part of the fine line, right? It's like the fine line. Of course, your best friend is going to pass you. Of course, one of your friends is going to pass you. So just sharing that for what it's worth.
Awesome. Any other questions? These are good. Thanks for that question, Evan. Oh, I see one in the chat. Should we be concerned that unfamiliarity will work against you? Unfamiliarity. What do you mean by unfamiliarity, Tony Ann?
Meaning, just like we talked about, Jacob just mentioned, the panelists may ask a question because they're not familiar with your branch of public relations. Could that not knowing, understanding that branch work against you as well? No,
I'm not. I wouldn't put anybody in the room who would do that to any of you, who would somehow find a reason to hold it against you that, you know, you work in a specific sector and they never did. So they're not going to pass you, or they're going to give you a hard time. I wouldn't do it. I'm not saying, now from the APRs I know in the chapter, and I've worked with nationally, none of them have had that kind of grudge or chip on their shoulder. But if I ever found out about, we'd know not to ask those people to come into the panel.
Well, I wasn't specifically speaking like about an intentful chip necessarily,
Right.
but there are restraints in government. For example, I work for state government, and there are restrictions in messaging. There are just things that are outside my control, and if somebody doesn't understand that, I'm just, you know, should I be concerned about that? Should there be steps we take to maybe explain, assume people don't know and explain it?
Exactly. You just have to be able to be prepared in your presentation to talk about what you are able to talk about. I think one of the sessions we asked about, like, what about proprietary information and whatnot in your readiness review? The idea is I'm going to share with you what I can. Some of it is proprietary, that what I can't share is proprietary, so I can't tell you. That's perfectly acceptable. The other part is that if there are, like, so for example, like, there are all kinds of rules in higher ed that I have to follow. I work in higher ed. I couldn't tell you any of my students' grades. I couldn't tell you who my students are in my class. I couldn't tell you if they're passing or failing. I can't tell you that. So if I were doing a presentation based on a campaign I worked with students on, I'd have to use pseudonyms for the students, things of that nature, and I would have to explain that, you know, there are FERPA laws I have to follow. So the names of the students have been changed so that I can talk to you about the KSAs that you're assessing me on. So it would be the same for your line of work in government. There are things you are able to do within your locus of control and things that you can't. And you just have to explain what those things are and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and I'll add, I think,
Thank you.
right, I was definitely, like Dr. Farben said, I took probably 5 minutes at the beginning of my brief to just explain what my job was, which was working with F-35s in Alaska. That was pretty foreign, I think, to everyone who was on the board. But it didn't come into play against me just because, right, the whole panel presentation is focused on KSAs, right? So that's the universal language for these panel presentations. So as long as you're building your briefs to talk about that stuff, you'll be fine.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Standing by for anything else. Yeah, Dr. Farben, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're going to send out the slides to everybody and the recording also in a couple days or so. Once we have everything recorded, all done, and you'll probably get a survey also. You know how this was, and if we did a bad job, tell us, because we want to be able to do this every year. So if there are things we need to change and things we need to improve on, tell us so we can strengthen this program in the future. But I just wanted to share this last slide. This is the website for PR accreditation. It's got everything on there. You've probably been on it already. It's got the now uploaded, revised maintenance of effort. I just did my maintenance last year with the 10 point. It was 10 points. Now it's 15 CEUs. And what they've done is they've taken the different they've taken the different areas, and they just, instead of calling them points, they're calling them CEUs now, and they've upped it from 10 to 15. So I just wanted to stop sharing my screen so we could see everybody and see if there are any other questions, comments, concerns, or anything else.
I see a note to remind that it's last time to nominate for Philly PRSA. Say that out loud so
Individual
people didn't see it in the
achievement
chat.
awards, there's the link right there. You can click if you're one of our members from the Philadelphia chapter. By all means, please nominate someone. And I already won PR Educator of the Year. They won't give it to me twice, so please don't nominate me. I don't have time to go to. My wife won't let me go to anywhere in person until our kids are vaccinated, so I'm not allowed to go. And she's the boss. And so please, if you do have individual awards or folks that would be eligible, please nominate them. It's a great time. When I went for mine, they had the Philly Fanatic there, and it was a fine time. It was a fun time. So Any other questions, comments, or concerns, whether it's prep for the test or not? I had a list of questions I was going to ask Kay to share, like test taking tips and whatnot, but knowing Kay, she already worked that into her presentation. So all my questions for you, Kay, were already answered.
Yeah, good to go. I saw Tony Ann write, that this has been encouraging. I hope that it is for everyone, because really I probably put it off longer than I needed to, just because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be ready. If there's anything nice about the 1 year like requirement, it's like you just got to get going, right? Like, so once you apply, you're like, okay, take the wheel and just get it done. But I don't have any regrets. I tell everyone that it's been such a wonderful experience, and I definitely feel just in general more confident about PR stuff, having come from the military side and going for an APR versus an APR plus N. It's nice to know that I have a lot of friends now in the APR world that I can fall back on if I get out of the military, and that I know what I'm talking about in the civilian sector. So, but yeah, thanks everyone for hanging out, and please do not hesitate to email me or reach out. You can find me on social media, you can find me an email, whatever. But best of luck to all of you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kay. This was terrific. And you've got you've got a fine career in front of you as an adjunct or full-time faculty member at a college or university, if that's what you want to do someday.
Yeah,
This was
maybe.
terrific. I just want to add one quick anecdote here, just to let you know my approach with all of this as the APR chair, and that is, we had the one time we had somebody fail. I remember back in the day, I was on her second panel. She went to the first panel and she took her test. The test was a week after 9/11. And she had friends that she lost and this, that, and the other, but she took the test anyway. So I remember sitting in her APR panel after she gave her, and her presentation was lights out. And she told us on the front end, I'm here because I failed the first time and I took the test a week after 9/11. I couldn't move it. And so I said that the fact that you're back here doing this again shows your resiliency and your commitment to this, besides the fact that her presentation was lights out. And then she passed it the second time, no problem, and she's an APR to this day. My point is that our approach through PRSA and through our chapter is, we want you to have this credential because of the doors it's open for all of us who did it already. We want you to have that same access to opportunity in this field that all of us have had. That's why I volunteered to be APR chair. That's why Kay volunteered to do this with us tonight and has volunteered to help all of us along the way. We have a commitment because it does two things. One, it's not just about helping bring others up, but it's about advancing the legitimacy of the profession in which we work. And everything we can do to help all of you along the way, that's what we want to do. And you'll have that responsibility and that obligation as well once you complete the APR. Once you go through it, you're going to have that yearning in your soul also that you want to advance this and make sure that others have this opportunity as well. Sharing that with you for what it's worth. You should all have my contact information. You can get through to me through the PRSA website, also PRSA Philly website. But in the meantime, if there's anything any of you need, in the meantime, until we meet again, please let me know. And finally, do it. Whatever works best for you, do it. Whether it's now, whether it's a year from now, or 5 months from now, whatever, do it. You won't regret it. It's much better on the other side once you have it. So, right. Thank you all so much. It was great to get to know all of you over the last 4 weeks. I wish you all the best in your professional pursuits and this APR pursuit. Please reach out to me if I can be of help. We want to get you through and get you to have these the opportunity to get new business cards. Let's say APR, right?